I'd like to begin the meeting. I'd like to say welcome to our audience. First of all, we're glad to have you here. And I need to remind the audience and the board members to silence their cell phones and electronic devices. Tonight's board meeting is being live streamed on Ukiah's YouTube channel, and the link is accessible on our website. Trustees, be sure you have your microphone turned on and speak into the microphone. If there is an audience member who wishes to address the board, please fill out a public comment form and present it to our executive assistant, Deb Ornelas, prior to the beginning of public comment. Public comment is taken for items not on the agenda, and each speaker is given 5 minutes. Public comment for items on the agenda is taken at the time of the item, and each speaker is given 5 minutes there also. Okay. At this point, we'll have the flag salute, and Mr. McCann is going to lead us in the flag salute.
When you asked me, it went right back to third grade, so I think this is how we used to do it. Ready, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. McCann. Superintendent Kubin, do we have a report out from closed session?
Yes.
Concerning item B8, it was moved by Nelson, seconded by Van Sant to approve the classified leave of absence request. It was, a roll call vote was taken, and it was 7-0.
Okay, thank you. And at this point, we need to have approval of the agenda, but I believe there might be a change. Superintendent Kubin?
Yes, we have 3 changes tonight. We would like to remove item F1 from the consent agenda and move it to E3. So we'd like to take that off and discuss it during action. We'd also like to remove item F17 and F44.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the agenda with those changes?
I so move.
A second?
I second it.
All those in favor? Aye. Right, at this point, do we have public comment for items not on the agenda? Okay. All right, if there is no one who wishes to give public comment, we'll go on to our employee organizations brief reports. So first of all, we have CSEA. Lisa?
Hi, welcome back, everybody. Hope you guys had a great summer. Do I have to? I'm really loud.
I know, but the video picks it up, Lisa, sorry. That's okay.
Like that. So we just had our first meeting back from summer, and we ratified our contract that we had the tentative agreement with the district, and it was a vote of unanimous yes. So that went through tonight, so yay, that's good. We gave out, instead of 2 scholarships this year, we gave out 3, and my treasurer wasn't happy, but we did it anyway because we did. I think it's important to give back to the kids. So we gave out 3 this year, and we were still paying for 1 from last year, but we're square with that. We're waiting on 2 more to send in their transcripts for to get their $500. So that's exciting. We also made a donation to, what is the name of the relief fund? The relief fund that gave, it's for CSEA, and they gave a lot of the members that were affected by the fire last year. I think they gave them $1,000 to help them get back on their feet. We donated to that. We donated $200. Our chapter did. So we feel like that's important too. What else are we doing? So we're just getting back into the swing of things, as you guys are. So we have our meetings the 3rd Thursday of every month, and we look forward to a happy and joyous school year. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa, and welcome back to all of our CSEA employees, as well as our teachers, but I don't believe we have anybody here tonight from UTA. Okay, so then we have Mr. McCann. Are you giving our leadership report?
I never know what I'm gonna say. Before every faculty meeting, I start with an anecdote, and it's supposed to relate to whatever's going on in that particular meeting or during the day. So we're going to have an eclipse on Monday. This is the anecdote. And I prepared all my teachers 2 weeks before, and I said, okay, what brainstorming can we do? How are we going to handle this eclipse? Because it's going to fall, of course, right in the middle of the very first recess on the very first day of the school. So do you say to the kids, don't look up? Nah. So a lot of my teachers went, we're going to be proactive. And they bought glasses so you can view the eclipse. We come back, everybody's pretty excited. Okay, we got this going pretty well. One teacher raises his hand and says, John, problem with those glasses is you can't see anything with them. So when the kids aren't looking at the sun, they're blind. Okay, we can problem solve that one. We'll figure something out with it. Yesterday, after everybody had been prepared, Amazon recalled all of them because they were from Japan and the ISO numbers were false. So, we don't have to worry about blind kids bumping into the hallways. I'm 62. I remembered third grade, not only the pledge. I said, we did something that was low tech. We took a 3x5 card, took a pin, put a hole in it, and held it so that you could watch it on the ground. And I said, when I was in third grade, I still remember we all went around and went, ooh. And we moved all around the ground, and we never looked up at the sun because it was so cool to see it on the ground. So Nokomis has decided that we're going low tech. But the funny thing is, it's an 80% eclipse. So you know what? The kids can't look up at the sun when it's all there, and they can't look up when it's only 20% there anyways. So I figure we've got this problem solved. Now, why did I tell that anecdote? We're starting out the school year, and there are a lot of opportunities for creative problem solving. But the fun part about this is we had a retreat for leadership, and it was exciting because we devoted ourselves to not just new initiatives or anything else. We dived deeply into instructional methodology. That's exciting for a principal, and that's what I got to bring to my staff. Is instructional methodology, not let's try this thing, no, here's the way we're going to teach now. That's pretty exciting for the people at Nokomis. But more than that, at leadership, we kind of came together. We've been together long enough, and it felt like we had some sort of unity of purpose. So we have a new brand at Nokomis that really fits us, and it's pulled us all together. So on everything we produce at Nokomis, this is the brand we have now. Every child by name and need. And it's not just a slogan, it's not just a brand. Everybody at my staff, when they heard they went, yes, that is Nokomis. So not only are we the best school in the universe, but we have the best brand. But the point of all this is we have a lot of problems to solve, a lot of challenges to go through. But it feels like we're getting more and more unified. And I think calling ourselves Ukiah Unified School District is really becoming more apropos and true as the years go by. And I'll finish by saying that was no more true or evident than when I saw all of you in your seats on that music video. I never realized how much rhythm people can have by sitting on their backsides. But thank you for participating.
7 takes.
Thank you, John. We appreciated that. Okay, next we have acceptance of donations. And for this month, we have a donation to Oak Manor School for books for classrooms by William or Susan McCarthy. So we would like to thank them, and do we have a vote to accept that donation?
I move acceptance of the donation with gratitude.
Thank you.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next on the agenda is Penny Lawson. Oh, no, that was the one we just did. I did it, huh? Oh, no, I'm right. Okay, it's Penny's on again. I just wanted to throw a curve to you.
Okay, I put together a presentation to share with you the impact of the state's enacted budget on our adopted budget. A few things here that we'll be going over. And basically what we're looking at is we adopted our budget for 2017-18 in June, meeting the statutory requirement, based on assumptions from the governor's May revision of his proposal for 17-18. And then the governor signs and enacts the budget, and some of those assumptions changed. And that will impact our adopted budget, and this presentation is going to show you what the differences are. So the main difference, or one of the big differences, is, as usual, because you see this routinely, is the change to our local control funding formula, which is the biggest portion of our revenue. The ADA, we maintain the same ADA assumption of how many students we're going to have. The unduplicated pupil percentage remains the same, but the gap percentage changed. And that gap percentage is that difference from the target of where we're supposed to get to by 2021 and the floor, which is last year's funding. That difference is the gap. And so each year, the Department of Finance determines how much of that gap they're going to fund. Well, we're now at 97% to the target, so there's only a 3% left, and that that percentage of that 3% that's getting funded is the 43.19. So those changes from our adopted, the first yellow column, to the state's enacted budget amount, the difference is on that final column. And so I've got each of the yellow would be this year, the blue section is 18-19, and the green section is 19-20. Because as you know, we're always looking at the current year and the 2 out years, which is required to determine what our financial condition is. So as you can see, this year, not much of a change. However, when our ADA changes, that'll be a change that we may or may not see reflected at first interim, but probably by second interim. When you see that in March, we'll know. So this is the one-time funds. This was a big change. If you'll recall, when we adopted the budget, the governors, I believe it was the May revise, said that yes, you'll have one-time funds for 17-18, but we're not going to pay them to you in 17-18. So everybody said, well, then we can't recognize them as revenue in 17-18. Well, when they enacted the budget, they realized that really, wasn't right, or that for whatever reason. So now we are going to be able to add to this year's budget $147 per average daily attendance, which comes to $818,000 for us, which is wonderful.
Yes.
One-time money, though, not ongoing. So we have to be very cognizant of that difference, as always. So, with that, I felt the need as the CBO to remind everyone that we have a lot of one-time needs as well. So we're getting this funding, and so I went ahead and broke out some other, what we could consider as one-time money is that recently we've had a change to our E-rate infrastructure project, and we're going to realize a substantial savings in that area. And if you guys will recall, we went ahead and set that money aside on the restricted side of the budget. And it appears that we'll have this $576,000 for the most part available once we are approved for our funding and we can proceed with that. So that's sitting there, and I wanted to make sure you're aware of that. Then I've added the $818,000 we just talked about as 17-18 one-time funds. And then as you guys will recall, when we close our books every year, there's always those unspent amounts that add up to sometimes a substantial amount, because we have thousands of budget accounts in our budget. So all those little bits that don't get spent will be an amount at the end of the year. It could be $1 million, on our $70 million budget. It's all relative, but so that's to be determined when we close the books, and we'll know that at our September meeting, because that's when I present the unaudited actuals. So we'll be able to add that amount to this almost 4 million right here. But then on the expense side of one-time funds, we know we have our textbook adoptions for this current year and the next couple of years. The amount that we're short, to the best of our knowledge, with our multi-year projection on textbook adoption costs, about $763,000 for that. And then on our deferred maintenance, our currently approved deferred maintenance plan that shows some unfunded projects. I've noted just one in particular that we are very concerned about is the Grace Hudson HVAC replacement that's high on our list of needs. And then if you add up the other unfunded projects on our deferred maintenance, it's about $4.4 million. And then also it's high on our list of needs is the need for the artificial turf field. So if you add those up, and actually I don't believe any of that is currently yet board approved, we come to about the 8.6 something million. Now I believe on the facility needs, once our facility master plan is finalized, we'll probably see this list, grow substantially because then we've really looked at needs and then the wants, and then needing to prioritize for our facilities. This deferred maintenance is what we've been able to identify currently, and I hate to say it, but there's probably always more, more and more that gets identified as the need as our facilities age. So anyway, I just wanted to remind everyone that we've got some one-time money, but we've got a lot of one-time needs as well. So here's some good news. The more good news, the one-time money was really good news. The Prop 39, that's the California Clean Energy Jobs Act. If you'll recall, in June, you approved the expenditure plan for that, and we submitted it to the CEC Commission, or California Energy Commission, and it's been approved. And now on this agenda, in the consent agenda, is the contract for IES and Indoor Environmental Services to do the construction portion of that for us. And we'll have a little bit of balance after that's all done. But what the really good news is that this, when the budget was enacted, this program extends indefinitely. 17-18 was to be the end of the 5-year program, but now it's extended indefinitely as long as the state, continues to fund it. And it's averaged probably a little over 300,000, or right about 300,000 a year. So that, but you have, that we would be able to use toward energy efficiency projects. So another change that the enacted budget brought was the new employee orientation that takes effect immediately. And that's so that bargaining units have the ability to meet with new employees. And so we already provide that opportunity for our UTA bargaining unit. They meet at the new teacher orientation, and we'll work with CSEA to generate a plan for the CSEA onboarding employees, because that usually occurs kind of throughout the year, where the teachers are all mostly hired at one time. So we're going to work on that. And so I always like people to be aware, because and you hear me say it all the time, our budget is, that living document that's always changing. Every time any of our assumptions change, the number of students we have, the staffing that we expect and then that we actually get, it's all based on assumption. As they change, so will the budget, and then so will our multi-year projections. School Services of California, in their school management conference this summer, provided a lot of advice to districts. And I just wanted to quickly go through this list so that we're all aware of what that is. Most school districts do use School Services as their liaison between what the government provides us and then, what pertains specifically to K-12 education. So here, develop a plan to stop or avoid deficit spending now, and that's what we're working on. Make no new commitments of ongoing funding. Use anything we get to cover expenses for existing programs. I think that's, reasonable. Do not use one-time discretionary funds for ongoing commitments. I think we know that. Tighten up staffing ratios and other cost drivers to ensure efficient operations. We have a really supported, well-run position control system in our accounting fiscal department. And so I'm kind of using this as a checklist that we can be very proud as we go down this list that we are doing or planning to do all of these. Average school district reserve levels are rising in anticipation of lower funding increases and higher costs in the future. Ours should be increasing as well. Well, if you'll recall, our last multi-year projection shows that we should be ending the year at our 9% reserve or a little more. So that's really good. Proportionality, statutory requirement, and to make sure we're complying with that and that unduplicated pupils are getting the services above the level of our base programs. And as Katie and I were talking, we are principally directing our supplemental concentration grant funds to the unduplicated pupil percentage. And because that's such a high population, it does affect it school-wide for us. And then we take the time to fully inform our bargaining units of financial trends and impacts. And by doing that, and our negotiation process, we are developing those great relationships that allow us to solve problems based on trust and facts. And as I went through these, I was very proud of us. And then here, this is where it starts to get difficult. As we're approaching our full implementation of the LCFF, that 97% there to our target, we're very close to the COLA-only environment intended by the state when it's fully implemented. But the problem with that is that our costs are going to be rising more once we get that last 3% there, which we're about half of that this year if we're at 43-something of that gap. Then these increases are, on the statewide average, coming in about 4%, where we're not quite getting, we're not getting 4%. So that's creating a structural deficit. And I believe it was Ron Bennett that said almost every district he knows is showing deficit spending by that third year. So we're not alone in this at all. It's just a matter of managing it. New revenues forecast to be at about half the growth in expenses. Conservative school districts will take actions now to avoid potentially larger program reductions in the future. So I commend you on our actions that we're taking along those lines. PERS and STIRS, it's like a broken record as far as those increases are so substantial, and I think that it's really terrible, that last bullet point, that the state will probably not grant us any relief. I keep hoping that, we'll have the strong enough lobbies that they'll realize what this is doing. All of these new LCFF restoration dollars that we're getting, about 25% of those are going to these increases in retirement costs, which is really a shame for our students. But, and this is the last slide on their advice. Maintaining reserves is vital, and I think our 9% is a really good amount, which you have determined is appropriate for our district. So that's a really good thing. And so when we adopted the budget, we decided to identify the $900,000 in reductions to start next year. And this is a reminder of why we're doing that, because the second blue line that goes all the way across on the revenues across the years is showing what we're bringing in from our reserves to balance our budget. And as you can see, this year we're planning to use about $900,000, next year $1.6 million, the next year $800,000. And so obviously we're needing to make some reductions because our reserves are depleting. And that's that final, the yellow is the percentage of the reserves as we go from this year to the next 2 years. And so here's a proposed budget reductions or budget savings, maybe is a nicer term, timeline. And I looked at the meeting dates, the milestone, and then I said assigned to, but I don't know, maybe responsible party or assigned to, just wording there. But at our June 15th meeting, you approved the budget savings goal of $900,000 for next year, and that was you, the Board of Education. This is our meeting now that we're talking about the impact of the enacted budget and budget priorities discussion, which basically would be that we have our strategic plan, and so our budget priorities are really well lined out there. September 21st, we have our first leadership meeting, so I was hoping after today to then push out to the sites and to our principals the need for them to work with their sites to help us and submit recommendations for savings or reductions for next year, so that all of our sites would be involved and our departments as well. October 5th is our first district advisory committee meeting. We could review this budget reduction savings timeline with them and share with them the site and department recommendations. And then October 19th is the next leadership meeting. So we would review the savings and maybe, some people may have revenue enhancement ideas as well. And at that point, we have to cost out the ideas too. So we'll be working on that. And then the next leadership meeting would be a final prioritization of the reductions or enhancements. And then there's another district advisory committee where we could share the prioritization of leadership with them and ask them for their prioritization. And then in December, we would present all of the stakeholders' combined recommendations with our superintendent's recommendations for approval by the board, because then in January begins budget development for 18-19. And we'll need to kind of solidify what our reductions will be by then. So that's a proposed timeline, and that's hitting what I'm hoping would be all of our stakeholders. Our district advisory committee meeting includes union representation, site representation, both certificated and classified staff, there's leadership meetings involved in our reduction timeline. Community members are a part of our district advisory committee. We have parents there, we have students there, because we want stakeholder input. It's very important for making these decisions. And that brings us to our next steps. In September, you'll have the unaudited actuals. The only time we know actually what happened to our budget. It's not going to always be changing. That's that's what really happened last year. In October, fiscal calculates the true up for the negotiations formula from 16-17 because that was based on our estimates. And according to our MOU with our bargaining units, we take those estimates and then we finalize them in a true up process, and that'll determine either more of an increase on salaries, or if we increase too much, then we'd come back to the table to work on that. If it's less than 0.5%, it would just kind of stay on the books and be added to the next calculation, which at that time, then we estimate what this year would bring. And if it's positive or negative, then we add that to it, the true up from 16-17. So after that, and then September through November, we're going to be developing these budget reduction recommendations from all our stakeholders. In December, I'll bring you this year's budget revision for the first interim, and that's taking all the positions that we estimated that we would be hiring over the summer, and we'll be putting in the exact amounts because we hired, I believe, 54 teachers, and we had to estimate what we'd be paying them, but we'll know what those are. So we'll bring you a more accurate, updated budget in December, and at that time ask you to approve the budget reduction recommendations for next year. And then again in January, we get geared up for 18-19. And then just one little twist, our financial software, we're going to be working on changing that over this year to start July 1st. We'll have a new financial software, and it'll be a good thing for us. We're looking really forward to it. And that's it, folks. So I'm ready for questions.
Do we have questions from the board? Okay, Megan.
My thing is freezing up for a second, so I might, I'm going off my notes, but I can't look at this slide here. On page 4, well, let me just go, on slide 4, with all the red.
The LCFF.
Yeah. What assumptions changed?
It was the gap percentage.
Not our ADA?
We won't change that until we have something more firm to use to change it.
How many kids are enrolled right now? I know it's totally crazy and you don't feel like you can rely on it, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, and we do, that would be good news, and I didn't mention that. We do expect to have higher enrollment. So that'll be.
Because historically, I feel like we always underestimate, so I'm just wondering.
Well, what we do when we budget, we're guaranteed the P2 in April, that amount for this year, and it's a minimum. And then if we get more, the state will pay us more. If we get less, we're still guaranteed that minimum. So most districts, if in our situation, as far as how our enrollment's going, would just budget that P2 until you know how much.
Is that what that is?
Yes.
Is that our P2 of last year?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And Megan, I'll just add, we have a lot of students, and we
That's what I
haven't
thought.
accounted for the increased enrollment at Eagle Peak.
You have or have not?
We have not in this scenario, so we will have to do that too
Right.
when we see it.
Are we talking like 10 students more, or
no.
like 100 or
We're-
200?
At Eagle Peak?
No, overall.
I don't know. I really can't even, I know at Eagle Peak, I think it's 70 maybe, something like that. So
70-70?
70-ish, yes.
I think it's going to be a good amount.
I'll
We-
also add that we are going to get to 95% attendance rate this
Yeah,
year.
that's right. Yeah.
So that will help us very much as
Right.
well.
Revenue
Because
enhancement.
remember, 1% is around 400-ish.
I remember that
$1,000.
promise.
Yes.
Right. So,
Okay, so
Come on, you guys. We can do it.
on page 6, so I just follow this because I understand the budget department's, the way they think. And you want to be conservative, and I totally get it. But I just was wanting to verify that that's probably unlikely to go lower in terms of our student ADA.
correct.
You feel, you could
Yes,
say yes to
I
that,
would,
okay.
I would say
All right, so
absolutely
unlikely to go
yes to
lower.
that.
Okay, on slide 6, what's your guess about the budget savings at the year-end closing?
Oh,
It's also going to be a positive number?
yes, and I'm thinking that we really probably may close at closer to 10%, but I think that that's
What does that mean?
Well, our reserve level.
So
So,
1% variance from the 9% reserve.
Closer to 10%, meaning that half of it will get you to 10%? Half, 'cause we have
well,
50%.
I really wouldn't, I think, it's only about 3 weeks and we'll know. I don't, we don't have even preliminary. Yeah, I know.
Okay,
But I think it's really important that, see, we have a lot going for us. We have probably more students. I don't want to discount the need to identify reductions, though.
no, and that's not
Yeah,
my
right. Oh,
agenda,
okay,
although it may
okay.
seem that way, and I
Okay.
partly there, but not all the way there. And then, this is like slightly off topic, but on page 7, and I'm sure we knew this, I just can't remember it. What are we spending $1 million on? What are we doing with that energy money? Is it light bulbs?
It's mostly lighting retrofits.
Okay,
Correct, Dave?
it was pretty much all lighting. I remember it was nothing super exciting, but it was.
And that should save us a little over $60,000 a year in utility costs.
It's great, okay.
Put
So it
that
was
into
lighting,
our
I thought it was
multi-year
that.
projection.
And then on page 15, so I'm sure we did this. I don't remember the board saying we are committing to $900,000 in cuts. Am I crazy in just not remembering that, board?
I think it was a slide that it was recommended.
I'm not opposed to it. I just I don't remember making that commitment, and I'm just wondering, is not striking a bell with anybody? Okay,
It doesn't strike a bell with me.
but
which is why-
I'm not trusting myself here. I
Which
don't.
is why I'm objecting to even talking about it very much, and I know we're not really talking about it tonight, but I don't want to get people up in arms when we know attendance is going to be up. We know ADA is going to be up, and so I just don't want to exaggerate the need for reductions.
I think I agree with Ann on that. I think there's a little bit of risk in over crying wolf. Not that I'm saying we're crying wolf, but I just, that's why I was a little struck by, we committed to identifying a budget savings of 900,000, because I just didn't quite remember that. So I'm just wondering what our plan is after all of those numbers change, as they will, and that column that shows $900,000 right now is not going to show $900,000. It's going to show something much lower. Are we then going to adjust our budget savings goal?
Yes.
Yes, it would. And then I think if we did multi-year projections that were even another year that showed another deficit spending, and then next year it shows the multi-year projection shows 1.6 million coming from, and we're identifying 900,000. I think that we are being even conservative with our reductions, because as we level off with that LCFF funding and we no longer receive these large increases, and our expenses, which we know on the pension side are going up. And then as I was looking each year for the last 3 years, our contribution to special ed has gone up over $500,000 each year. That we structurally, we need to be there. And then we're not even counting on a recession or an economic downturn to the state, which, eventually, as we are cyclical, will occur.
Right. I hear that. I just, I I want to be careful in our strategy. I don't think
I
there's,
agree.
I think going through the exercise of identifying potential budget savings is important. I think it's also a little risky to say, okay, this is the something that we're willing to get rid of, and then not do it. It kind of puts that element kind of under a shadow, or do it, and then turns out not to have been necessary. I mean, that happens all the time, but I just want us to think carefully about how we're approaching this, and that's why I'm a little nervous about attaching to a dollar amount to it. I'm not sure if that helps or hinders the process.
Oh, I see. Well, I know too that goal could be achieved partly by our attendance increase and not necessarily reductions, but revenue enhancements. And I tried to add that
Right.
wording in there too.
And the savings
So,
goal.
right. So it'll be, and then things are possibly a range too, not real hard numbers. And I don't know that we want to say. I think that it's never a bad idea to ask people for input on becoming more efficient.
I agree with that.
And we've been spending a lot of new money for several years now, and it's not a bad idea to look for efficiencies.
So you're warning us that the gravy train is about to end and that we need to think differently.
That's, yes.
And I think that's a really important message to get out, much more so than an actual number.
Okay.
B, I'm assuming we're not tied into the 900,000, that was just like you said, how do we achieve some of this? And that was what you thought at this point.
Right.
Without all the other variables that Megan has suggested and you're bringing in and Anna say, I mean, lots of things happen.
Right.
But so this is not a commitment, this is just showing the possibility. And in the end, we'll decide, know that we want this program, and with all the different variables involved here and has input, that's the bottom line, not this number. You were just objecting to it being there, Megan?
I'm not.
Well, it changes.
Objecting. I don't remember making that commitment, so that was my first thought. But that could be me not remembering. It just was written so definitively, as if we said we're going to. It looks as if we said in June that we're cutting $900,000 out of the budget for 18-19, and I just don't remember the discussion happening in that way. I could just not be remembering things.
I didn't read it that way.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. And so, I don't know if I have an objection necessarily. I'm just noting.
But I
Noting.
think it is important to realize that number changes, and that as we see that ending fund balance at year end.
You know why?
that-
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Finish up. You know why I'm objecting? Because I think that if we're looking at that column, it's quite likely that number could become 0, and then it looks really weird. That's the problem. With an increase in ADA of 100, with your attendance going up to 95%, I mean, it could end up being that we look like, just if we went back to your chart, you could end up saying that we don't have a savings need for 18-19, but you want us to think about it. So that's
And
the risk of tying it to a number.
Right,
is
and
my
maybe
thought.
prioritizing when the time does come. I think that's always a good idea, so that people are on board and feel, everyone's input is valued and the discussion has occurred before it's, completely necessary, and it's not a planning stage. It's a necessity.
Gail?
On the expenditure of the one-time money, when will we get, I remember the long list. I remember when Gabe did an incredible analysis of what all the schools needed, and it was an overwhelmingly frightening list. But I'm wondering when we will, in terms of making these decisions, when will we have that list with the cost attached?
Well, there's deferred maintenance, and then we have our facility master plan as
Yeah.
well, which I think will help us make a better deferred maintenance list because of all their cost estimates associated with that.
And so, because I know certain things we have taken out of supplemental funds, and so I'm assuming that even though this is one-time money, there might be circumstances where we could use something, buy something that's in the supplemental plan if it's a one-time thing. I guess my question is, and I'm willing to step into the target zone here. When we've talked about these things, the last time we talked about the turf at this board meeting, we talked about that being something that we would have to do a parcel tax about or something, because it wasn't something that, it was an extraordinarily high expense.
It's expensive.
And even though that's been said several times, I keep seeing it added back in, and I'm confused by that. I remember the comment, so.
It's on this list because it was such a strong discussion in our facilities master plan group, in the district advisory committee group. So
I
that's
don't
why,
remember that in the district advisory
that's why
committee
it's
group at
on
all.
here.
Yeah.
In the district advisory committee, when the district advisory committee was consulted with about the facilities master plan, that's where it came from, in that workshop that was done at the district advisory committee. So it was just, it has come forward as a very strong desire. And so that's why we're just keeping it on there. If the consensus of the board right now at this moment in time is to take that off the list, we'll do it. But I don't think the board as a whole has said to us, take that off the list. You haven't voted on any of these things yet.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
So it's just on there as a placeholder. I think Penny's point is, we have a lot of one-time needs in our district, in a variety of categories. We need to pay attention to it, and when we have one-time money, we need to make sure that we don't, that we pay attention to that.
Okay. I just-
Megan?
Can I ask for clarification on the artificial turf field? Because I feel like I'm not, and I don't know sports seasons very well, so I get mixed up in my head. But is it true that our soccer teams are unable to have home games at all? That's what I
So the
understood.
soccer season has changed to a winter sport. And so what happens to our field is we play football on it, and then it starts raining, and the field gets torn up. And last year, at the end of the season, our soccer teams were unable to play a home game at the end of the season.
Unable
because
to play
our
one home game, or they were unable to play
field
any?
was in bad shape.
They did have some home games. There was one
Correct.
home game they were unable to play?
But the league, all of the districts and all of the teams in the league have artificial turfs, and we don't. So the fear, I think, is that if it rains too much and the field is too terrible, that it could be possible that they wouldn't be able to play some home games. I
Okay.
think the game that got changed, it was senior night, and so the seniors were being honored and recognized with their parents, and we couldn't have that at home. It had to be held at the opposing team's field.
Okay, so, but I guess my information is slightly inaccurate. It's not true that they can never play a home game there?
If the field is in okay condition, they can,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, that's different than what I had heard, so, and we did have a particularly wet
Yes.
winter, which was great, but,
We had a normal winter, probably.
yeah, yes, that's true, so, okay, thank you.
Okay, Ann?
Just quickly, why didn't we go to Mendocino College for that senior night game?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. And you probably don't know off the top of your head, but how are we doing on trash? We suddenly had to start paying trash a couple years ago, where we had been free for so many years. It was beyond our control, but I'm wondering how we're doing on that.
It's a little over 100,000 a year, just off the top of my head. Right, and it's been a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you just send me what it's been for the last few years?
Okay,
That'd be great. Thank you. Yeah.
absolutely, will do.
Trash, yeah.
Pick up trash?
Yeah, we didn't have to pay to pick up trash because of the agreement between the hauler and the city of Ukiah. And then they switched, and unbeknownst to us, they switched and threw us out. I mean, it wasn't the city's fault, it was just, that's how it was.
Okay, any other questions?
Just to follow up on Gail's, because I got derailed by the turf field, what is the decision-making process for the one-time money?
In September, Penny will bring you, after the books close, she'll bring you the unaudited actuals. We'll know at that point if we have additional one-time money. And then we need to bring a proposed plan back to the board for consideration.
In September, or you're thinking maybe
I'm
afterwards?
thinking October.
Okay.
I also kind of want to see how attendance shakes out and enrollment, because
It'll impact it all.
I see it as big picture, and we may be able to do some things spread out over multi-years to help us, so.
And
Okay,
then I
thanks.
think it's important also to realize when we have those additional students, we also have additional staff and associated costs as well. So we'll have to consider that too.
Gail, did you have something?
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, Penny, thank you so much for all your information and for keeping us on the right track.
Thank you. So should we, as we move forward with this, take out the dollar figure and say that at the time we adopted our budget, it looked like about 900,000, but as we know, our budgets change, and so we don't.
Does it matter?
Penny, I think the messaging around it is important. What you just said right there is a good message.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yes, we need a motion to approve the budget review based on state enacted budget.
I so move.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the appointment eventually to the committees that the board needs to have representatives to. These include the District Advisory Committee, UTA negotiations, CSEA negotiations, and the City Schools Committee. Do we have suggestions from the board for Superintendent Kuban for appointments?
I've done city schools for 3 years, so I'd be happy to step down if someone else would like that opportunity.
Okay. We have
I was going to suggest that B. Arkin and Carolyn Barrett consider UTA negotiations.
All right.
Sure.
Other suggestions? Zoe Fernandez and Tyler Nelson doing CSEA negotiations?
Sure.
And the City Schools Committee?
Megan?
I'm interested in that.
All
you
right, do
decide
you
then.
you have some suggestions,
Yes.
Superintendent Kuban?
Yes?
Okay.
And we also have the District Advisory Committee.
And I've been doing that. I'd be happy to continue if that's at the pleasure of the board.
I would love to, but I know that I'll be out of town sometimes.
So maybe you could
Like the
be a
first meeting.
backup,
Would you be,
a backup, or
Sure.
go when you can. That would be good.
Okay.
Okay.
that'd be great.
all right.
And just a reminder, the board makes these recommendations, and then I will be sending out a letter to you all, letting you know that you've been selected by me. So, thank you for your input.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have dates that we need to set for board workshops and topics. So I'm not sure how much thought you've put into this, board, but we do need some suggestions. Do we have any?
Is there anything you want to learn more about in a deeper way? I think is the big question. And our suggestion is to, again, do a governance workshop in January. And then we'd like to do a deeper workshop on our data for the board, so we can have some more dialogue and discussions. We also Governance. We also have the facilities master plan coming up. We probably need a good chunk of time for that, but.
I don't know if this is, it's probably not a topic for a special board meeting, but I'd be really curious to learn more about the transportation department. And just, because we always seem to wind up with situations where we don't have information, or we don't understand how or the whole thing is planned out, but I don't know if anybody else is interested.
Was what, Gail, on this? Transportation. Oh, transportation in general?
We did that. Do you want an update this year, or?
Yeah, I mean, there
Yeah.
are some issues that have come up, and we could just email you the issues we're concerned about. And
Sure.
then- Okay.
Maybe we could just add that to a board agenda rather than a special workshop.
We could do that. We have just hired a new transportation supervisor, so I'd love that person to be able to get their feet on the ground. So I'm thinking in a couple of months, we could put that on a board agenda.
Or maybe in the winter.
In the winter would be good.
Okay.
I'll toss out an idea that, I'm not married to, but, what about, like, instructional practices, like reading instruction or, best
Yes.
instruction, or what we're doing?
Yes, we would love to do that.
I don't know, is that too dry and boring for everybody?
No,
No, I think that would be great.
that'd be a good idea.
You mean what the schools are doing, do you mean?
For the high-quality reading instruction, perhaps?
Which programs?
I don't know if we want to do reading and math, or, I don't know, we haven't done much on instruction, which is kind of sad now that I think about it.
It would be really fun to share with you the book that some of us just read and that we're using. You don't have to read it, but some of the key concepts from there, it's all about visible evidence for literacy. And it's a book full of research on strategies and practices that work, and our leadership network is looking at it. Would be fun to share with you. The Cliff's Notes,
I think that would be great.
and what our schools are doing.
I think we should do that.
Yes?
Okay.
So we still have one more.
You don't have to have 4, you know.
No, trying to think what we haven't
We've done a lot of workshops
We
for the
have done,
board,
yeah.
so.
Could we hold off on the 4th and see if something, have that one be the last one and see if something comes up?
We could, just let us know so we can plan our work and the staff can prepare for it, but it's fine if something
With a
comes
lead
up.
time of at least 3 months.
That would be fantastic, Megan. You know me so well now.
But just so hold the date to be determined at least 3 months in advance.
That would be great.
So then it looks like we have governance, we have facilities master plan,
Data,
and what's that?
the data, isn't that what you
And data, and
do have
reading, so
That is
that's 4 already.
Oh,
I'm just gonna throw this out there, not to kick you in the backside.
Go ahead.
The reading one, can we dedicate 2 hours to a reading workshop? Like, just being a farmer?
Yes. It'll
We
be
can.
so much fun for us.
Well, I'm looking forward to it then.
Well, I mean, it's
It will
super
be
easy to
broader,
map.
it will be broader than reading. Just, we will, we'd also love to spend a little bit of time having you engage in some of the Smarter Balanced assessments so you can get an idea about what the kids are being asked
So
in the
once you
state
have us take
testing.
the test?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So
How about
it
like
would be
6th
really
grade?
fun to do something, it would be really fun to do something on instruction and assessment.
Test us.
Yes.
Share our results with
Oh, yes. No. That would be
Okay,
fun.
so then you will set up the dates?
Yes, and we'll try to spread them out a little bit
Okay.
for the sanity of the staff.
Chair Barrett, just one more thing. Thank you. When I asked Superintendent Cuban, what's the one thing you want us to do so that we can help children succeed? And she says the quality of the teacher in the classroom. And so what I want to do is start that discussion of how are we making sure that we are selecting and keeping and encouraging teachers to be the best they can be. I know there's so much research out there about, everything from Finland to everything else. But I think it would be nice to start the conversation. And that's not in the absence of teachers. I would love to have kind of like a group. I could imagine a group workshop where we just start talking about that with both teachers and the board. And I'm not talking about evaluations or anything else. I'm just starting, just to start the conversation.
and along the same lines, I'm always concerned that, I went to some good workshops on this, that our principals have enough time and are spending enough time evaluating or monitoring or just walking around and listening, but especially to the first-year teachers, so that they can also have input into how that's going and what's happening with them. And including, I also had a question about what are our, not the BITSA, but our other mentors, what kinds of things they're doing with teachers. And, I mean, is there any plan? Do we know exactly what the content of their help is, or are we getting feedback on that? We are, okay.
Did survey at the end of the year. Sorry, I don't know if this is appropriate.
So I think there's a suggestion maybe that we focus on hiring practices, retention practices, and
Support,
I'm not sure
Support.
it's hiring practices, is it? Is that what you mean?
well, Anne was talking about how we identify teachers. That's why I was thinking hiring practices.
I feel like maybe, Ann, what you're getting is teacher quality, which sounds not very kind, or.
It
this
sounds so
doesn't sound-
judgmental.
Yeah, and I don't think that's what we mean, but it's the concept of the quality of teaching is the most important thing.
Right.
There is. How do we talk about that and encourage that, and what's the board's role in that, maybe? Because we talk a lot at the board about facilities, budgets, and blah, 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 but we don't really engage in quality of teaching. Maybe we're not supposed to, maybe it's not, but if that's the most important thing in a district success, how do we?
And I
how are
think
we
that
involved
one
in
thing that this board tried to do when we came on board was to really have salaries reflect that, so that we were at least trying to keep
Right.
the quality that we could. But since then, I don't know what we've done to really focus on that.
Katie and Nicole, what if we did something what if we tied it into instructional practice? I'm not trying to add too many things in, but we
No,
can connect it
right.
in there with instructional practices and how we support the classroom
Maybe, yeah,
instructionally.
maybe that's a way to.
And hitting on new teachers, and so we could do something like that.
So it's all in
Connected.
one evening?
Yes, 2 hours.
Okay.
And, maybe not part of that, but also, I know we've had enormous amounts of professional development, so it would be interesting to know.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, if teachers have thought that was effective, I hear good things, but, it's hard because you have some teachers doing that who've been teaching 15 years and others who are brand new, so, but.
Okay, so it looks like we have for board workshops,
We're trying to,
we have,
but we're not. We're really not there.
we have governance, we have data, and we have a facilities master plan, and then kind of a multi-focused session on instructional practices and teacher retention and support to make our classrooms the best they can be.
Yes. And in advance of those workshops, we will ask you to send us questions, so we make sure we can tailor them to what you are wanting.
Are the dates listed here that I'm not seeing?
No, we don't have
Okay.
dates yet. So do we have a motion to accept those 4 suggestions from the board?
So
I'm not thrilled with data, but.
But can we not do the data with the instructional practices? I mean, are they both two big, long ones?
I think the data's gonna be pretty involved.
Pretty long involved?
Well, it's
Yeah.
all of our metrics broken out by subgroup, getting into that. And we actually thought about adding in that's where we thought about adding in a performance task or something for the board to get an idea about what the kids are being asked on the state assessment.
Okay.
So we tie it into that.
So data, it means.
And assessment
it's
systems.
assessment data. It's
Yep.
not-
Right,
Right,
assessment.
And I think, we've been so concerned about our English learners, I would really think it would be important that we had some information about that.
That's
Is that
part of the
another
data.
suggestion?
That's what I meant, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
they're
it's
one
part
of
of
our
the data.
significant subgroups, so.
Right. All right, so do we have a motion to accept those 4 workshops?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So next week,
How do we go about setting the dates for those? Is it possible to try and do it when we're all together so that, rather than just pick a date, or maybe have a choice of dates or something, or is that unreasonable?
We try to give a few options for the board
Okay.
when we send them out. Debbie will look at the calendar, and we have suggested in this agenda item the months. We're looking at
Yeah,
September,
saw that.
September, October, governance workshop in January as usual, and then looking at a December workshop and a March workshop. So, but we'll look at the calendar and give you some dates, and you can let Debbie know.
Mhm.
okay.
September, October, December,
That's a lot.
January. There's too many.
No, I need to work with Katie on whether or not we can get something together by September or October.
What, September or October?
Yeah, yes.
God.
Okay.
And then January, a December, and a March. Sorry, December, January, and March.
Okay. All right. Next, we need to look at the 12-month board agenda planning calendar. And I think that was handed out to us.
We made 3 changes to this document, and remember, this is a working document. It is constantly changing. What it does is it helps the staff plan their work for the year, both by routine items that are always on the agenda during that particular month. We've also scoured through the strategic plan to make sure we've identified actions that we need the board to take related to items that are in the strategic plan. We did, this did get modified since it has been on the agenda, and I want to point out, we really need to take a look at our facility use fees.
Yeah.
And so we've added a few benchmarks in this for that. We added in the month of September, we'd like to bring you a timeline for updating the facility use fee schedule and the process for that. In November, we would like to have, and it will involve engaging stakeholders in discussion. We also added in November to review the draft of the facility use fee schedule, and then in December to approve it. So it's something that hasn't been looked at since 2004. So that's the only addition since what was on, attached to the agenda prior to the meeting.
I noticed the developer fees were on August, which we didn't do. Do we have a plan?
Yeah, they were on
Was
there.
it September?
We are shooting for September, but we haven't reconciled the questions that have come up yet. So
It could be a little later.
it could be a little later. Also in August is the math placement report. That's actually going to be on in September. Is there anything else the board would like to talk about this year at a board meeting that you know of right now at this moment?
I would like to have it, maybe it's on here somewhere and I haven't looked at this, haven't mastered it yet. Is special ed?
I have asked our special ed director to give me a written report on how we're doing related to the school services report, and my plan was to put it in a Friday communication to the board.
Okay.
And you had emailed us, Deborah, about the problem of students having to change schools because that school was full, and you suggested that perhaps we might want to reconsider that or at least discuss it.
Thank you for bringing that up. I'd like to bring that up in the October board meeting. I'd like to bring that agenda, or that policy to,
And
as a
that,
first
by then we'd know
discussion.
exactly how many students had to move.
Correct.
Because of that.
Yep.
Okay.
We have some ideas. So, anyway, we'd like to bring that to the board. Thank you for bringing that up. We'll add it to the agenda. I can't remember the board policy number, but we'll make sure and get it on there.
And the other issue in terms of transportation was, it came to my attention this year, and some other people knew about it, that some classes had been given field trip money or had been provided with transportation through the Department of Transportation's office. And in the past, we always had to pay for transportation for a field trip yourself. But apparently, according to this person, they just said, well, there was a fund in the transportation department. But that should be, if that's true, and I don't know, that those expenditures should have board policy approval. I mean, they're part of the budget, are they not? If they're happening?
When there's a field trip, the transportation department bills the school site or whatever. The only time we have transported kids was to the free space performance,
Well,
to my knowledge.
yeah, according to some teachers I know, they had a field trip and did not have to pay for it.
I would refer them to me so I can study it and understand what's happening.
All right, has anybody else heard about this?
Yes, I heard a reference to it.
I'm just not sure it's a board item. I mean, it seems like something Deb could communicate to us.
It used to be that the board had to approve those expenditures.
Well, at this point, we're not even sure if those expenditures
Oh,
are
yeah,
happening.
no,
so
but I
that's
mean,
the-
that's
that
my
would be the-
question, is if that was taking place, should we know that?
Well, I'd like to know about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's money that could be used for something else, and, or at least, anyway, there should be a policy about it.
So if things come up like that to the board, if you could refer those people to me, it would be really helpful.
We always
So-
do.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's so
Okay.
funny. I don't know why people chicken out. You don't bite. And I tell them that.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve the 12-month board agenda planning calendar.
I so move.
Well, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Now, we have first reading of several board policies from D5 to D16. Do we have any discussion on any of those?
These are the quarterly updates from CSBA, and so we've integrated the information. And remember, this is just a first reading, so if you think of anything between now and the next meeting, you can always email it to me as well, and we'll just update it for the second reading.
Any questions on those?
On the charter school, it was really nice to see the list of all the obligations, whatever, but the obligation to fulfill those requirements is the obligation of the charter school, is it not? We don't have to monitor every single one of those, do we?
When, in their annual report,
Uh-huh,
we do look at those.
okay, but we don't have to be on site or do anything like that?
We are legally required to one visit a year. We do a little bit more than that, but that is a legal
Okay.
requirement.
Okay. If there's no discussion on that, we will move along to the superintendent's report, E1.
Yes, I am so excited for the school year to start. I always get very excited when kids arrive. We work a lot over the summer to make sure things are ready, and I'm really looking forward to Monday. Can't wait to go to school sites and see cute students. We have up to date, we have 60 new certificated staff members.
So many.
We anticipated about 35 to 40, and there was a lot of movement that happened over the summer, so people moving.
Retirements or-
No, people moving out of the area. So we have, to date, we have 60. We're hoping by tomorrow we have 61, but we have 60.
If you
And that includes speech and language therapists, any certificated person.
Is there any pattern that we should take into account of the people who are leaving? Or were they all one-offs?
Or the people that are coming.
Yeah.
It's, I wouldn't.
Nicole? What is your thought?
We do seem to lose people who have significant others in other areas.
Darn it.
That's definitely a pattern, I would say. Those that come here that have attachments elsewhere often return to wherever they came from. Other than that, nothing springs to mind, but that one is a very marked.
They're moving for love.
Okay, so perhaps the IT department could do something and like, you're not allowed to swipe left or swipe right or whatever the swiping thing is if the person is not in the same zip code. Okay, so just a little thing, I'd like you to take over everyone's personal cell phone. Thank you.
Yeah.
What also struck me was at our management retreat, we only had one new administrator there, which was fantastic.
Oh,
We've
for
had a
you,
lot of
yeah.
new administrators over the past few years, and it's nice to have some stability and leadership. So that's super nice.
Can I just ask, because it's interesting to know the trends, do you know, what are bringing people here, the 60 new people? What were they attracted to, do you know? Sorry.
We're awesome,
Well,
Well,
how do
totally
they know that?
awesome.
But how did they know that before they got here?
because we told them. They
the
watched
new
our
website.
video.
The new website.
So
No, that wasn't
we've
up when
done
they were hired.
different ways of reaching out. Some have responded to emails that we sent out on EdJoin. If they've applied for jobs and we were looking for somebody that had applied for a math job, we could send a message out. So there's that. We've had some people that are returning to the area, and those are always nice to have because they know they know what we're about. And we actually had, I don't know offhand how many, but we had a couple people who came here returning to the area, which is really nice.
And they can live with their parents.
They can live with their parents, or their parents can live with them. Yes, it goes both ways. But so we've had a little bit of that as well.
Did we do anything different or to recruit bilingual teachers?
We went to the CABE conference. We sent some administrators there. They did not feel that it was productive,
Oh,
but they got to go to the conference.
Sure, they got something.
So we haven't, other than that, we haven't done anything markedly different to recruit bilingual teachers.
Okay, Superintendent Kuban has a few more things.
Yes. We talked about increased enrollment. We are expecting increased enrollment. At some point, we'll bring our new school resource officer to meet you. I'm really excited about her. The UPD did a presentation to our management team about updates related to gang activity in the community and gangs and drugs. So a team from UPD came. It was a great presentation, and she was part of that. We are transitioning to no thick paper back-to-school packet.
I did mine online. Very easy.
So we have our family community liaisons all set up to help our parents transition to that new system, and it certainly will probably be a couple of years of a transition, but in the long run, it will save time. We are definitely recruiting bus drivers, so any of you out there watching our awesome board meeting and think you want to come be a bus driver, we'd love to help train you, so please come be a bus driver. We are implementing bus passes this year. It will be about a month-long transition, and that mostly is to assure the safety of our students on the buses. So we're transitioning that, got just a couple of little changes. Those of you who are parents, you received my letter about those two changes. I also want to thank the students yesterday who performed for our back-to-school welcome for the staff. It was really fun. It was really fun to have students show off their amazing talents. And our staff who participated in the staff video, you can find that video now on our website. It's also posted on Facebook, so if you didn't get a chance to see it, it really shows the amazing fun side. Really fun, spirited side of our staff. So that's really fun. I also really want to thank the District Service Center team for all that they do to get school up and running. We added a week-long new teacher institute this year, so it's been 2 weeks of professional development. I know that it's a lot for staff, but we really appreciate them. It is so fun watching everybody work well together as a team. I want to thank the tech team for all of their work that they did on the website and to get that up and running. Watching them come together as a team as well was amazing. So thanks to our tech people who are in the room, and please pass on my thanks to the team. The HR department and personnel commission, everything that they do to get staff on board, maintenance, operations, grounds, custodians, our principals. We really have an amazing group of people in our district. I'm really proud of the work that we do, and I can't wait for kids to come on Monday.
Thank you. Do board members have anything they would like to add to the evening? Tyler?
Deb reminded me this summer I wanted to send one of our principals a note. And so I went to which I had forgotten that we had a new website up and running. I went to the website, I found the email link. I sent an email from my phone, it worked, it was awesome. So I'm so glad that new web page is up and running. Well done, everybody.
Anything else? Okay, we're going to move to E3, and I will turn it over to Zoe.
Wow. Exciting, okay.
Trustee Barrett is going to recuse herself from this conversation. It's about personnel actions, and so she's going to just step out of the room while the board considers this.
So E3 is personnel actions. Do you want to talk about it?
We just need a motion for approval of the personnel actions.
I move approval of the personnel actions.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, that was easy. Is it going to be like that all the time?
See, that's what we said, you got it.
Maybe I won't mind. Oh, should we wait for Carolyn or keep going? She's coming back, right?
It's gonna be embarrassing if she went.
Oh, yeah. Back to consent, Carolyn.
Okay, and now we will move to, we need to approve the consent agenda.
I so move, approve.
I second.
All in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
All right. So, now we will go to planning, and, do any board members have something that you would like to, add to the agenda of another meeting? Looks like we have a lot on the agenda. Okay, then we have agenda planning for the next meeting.
Tuesday the 5th or Wednesday the 6th, either one will work. I didn't know what was best.
I have jury duty on Tuesday, the 5th, and maybe I can get off.
It's not easy anymore. Not till
Tell them, Carolyn.
till you get old, and they let you know.
I thought my age would take care of it, but evidently not.
If you can run a school board, you can probably be on a jury.
Oh,
I can do Wednesday the 6th at lunchtime.
Does that work,
yeah,
Carolyn, for you?
yeah,
Okay,
that
Wednesday
should
the
be
6th?
fine.
What's going on?
We have two.
Agenda
Do we have
planning.
a third person for the 6th? Wednesday the 6th?
Nobody else wants to.
I don't want
Okay.
I did it last time, so.
Okay, Zoe.
Yeah, I'm sorry. we
So
are.
that's Zoe and Ann.
I can do October.
Noon?
Noon. All right, if there's nothing else, can we have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
I have a card. If I'm going to run out and grab it in my car, if you guys would just hang around for 1 second to sign it.
I will second that.
Okay, all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Don't leave yet, though. Zoe is
Yes,
fine.
stay.
Nice job. 5 minutes.